Welcome into Austin live from the Fox 7 Austin newsroom. It is post-primary election night here. Certainly last night, a ton to talk about, and it wouldn't be Texas politics without some drama, of course. Right before we came on the air, things were pretty smooth sailing. Everything was going as planned, so we thought. Governor Greg Abbott's going to win. Gina Hinojosa is probably going to grab the other nomination for the governor's race. But really the thing to keep an eye on, and what we thought was, the battle in the GOP for Senate between Wesley Hunt, John Cornyn, and of course the new age MAGA, if you will, in Ken Paxton, who is the current Attorney General. Well, that wasn't even the most interesting part of all this, because what it really came down to was the drama on the Democratic side between James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett out of Dallas. And it all started when we were getting wind out of the Democratic Party, specifically Crockett's campaign, who said, hey, some of our voters that are used to going to the YMCA or whatever local gym they'd go to suddenly are being told and being turned away from their polls. And so all of a sudden they've got to reroute, go to another spot. And so Crockett and her campaign, along with Congressman Colin Allred, come out and say, hey, this is unfair, this isn't right. And the judge up there in Dallas County decides to extend the deadline for this. So instead of the polls closing at 7 p.m., they close at 9 p.m., giving them an extra 2 hours. So then the next question was, and our chief political reporter, Rudy Koski, brought it up, was, well, what about Tallarico's backyard? Because we know Crockett being from Dallas, what does this mean for Williamson County here in the Austin area? He was initially told, that's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. And then we get told, wait a second, they are going to extend some of these locations, but only in 2 spots. And we were trying to figure out exactly why that is. Our very own reporter, Marco Bittnell, is on this story today, and he will give you guys sort of in a timeline, a sequence of events to get you from point A to point B and exactly what happened in all of this. Now, I do want to read the initial reasoning they gave us. And while we're doing this, let's just pull up the results for Tallarico, who, if I missed out on saying this, he did win. We thought maybe with the extension in Dallas County, what would this mean for Jasmine Crockett? It didn't matter in the end, so I'm going to pull up. Is that not working? Can you guys see that? Huh. The graphics are not working there for FS3, just letting you guys know. I can see it on my end, but I can't see that it's being broadcasted out to the universe there. Anyway, we'll get back to that press release. So Tallarico wins, but before that happens, last night we get a press release from Williamson County. And they say 2 Williamson County polling locations have been court-ordered to remain open until 10 p.m. Interesting to us. And then Rudy was in here and we're asking, okay, what does that mean? Is that all the locations? What does this mean? 2 locations, North Star Georgetown, which is a Democratic polling location, and then the Georgetown Annex, which is for both Democrats and Republican primaries. So all the votes cast after 7 o'clock were considered provisional ballots, according to election code. Because provisional ballots take additional time to process, none of the votes cast during extended polling hours will be processed tonight. They will be reported with other provisional voters on the Monday following the elections. So we had a lot of questions, like did they shoot to get more locations extended? Why did this happen? What's the timeline on all of this? So Marco reached out to them to figure out more information, and they directed him, okay, here's sort of our timeline of events here in a press release. So Marco's going to have all that to break it down, and I know sometimes it can be a little boring, I guess, but like I said, with these Texas politics here, it certainly isn't. A lot of drama here, a lot of strategy here. And many people considering what Jasmine Crockett did last night is sort of a smart play to say, hey, we knew, they knew that these locations were changing, but their people, that their base clearly did not. And so you have a situation here where people are having to move, and if it's after 7 o'clock, and let's say they get to their location by 6:50 and they're worried, wait, is my vote even going to count? And so a ton of headache last night, but about 1:30 in the morning, Finally, we get wind that James Tallarico is going to get the nomination there. And so it took a long time. And we thought maybe it would go into the next morning. Was there going to be lawsuits? Was there going to be backlash? What's the fallout of all this? But Tallarico ends up grabbing it there and will now head to the general election in November. But meanwhile, on the GOP side, things much more contentious in terms of just how close it is there. And so Tallarico gets, 53% of that vote. Meanwhile, over for the GOP side, John Cornyn, the incumbent, who has been there since 2002, nearly a quarter century there for the senator, we knew he was going to have a really tough battle with Attorney General Ken Paxton, who really is trying to show how good of friends he is with President Donald Trump. Cornyn slightly leading him, but not enough to get that nomination, so we're going to head to a runoff now in May. So it's going to be between John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, the AG, Wesley Hunt trailing in third. Really, as Rudy mentioned, just couldn't get out of the gate totally, got out pretty late, does have a solid support system, but could never get past that 13, 14% in the polling. But the question now is, everyone that was voting for Wesley Hunt, where do those votes go? Do they go to John Cornyn? Do they go to Ken Paxton? That certainly would make the difference, as it seems. But amid all of this, the reason I believe it was so tight is because we never got a full endorsement from President Trump. State of the Union, we saw everybody trying to shake hands with him. If you can, as Mike Warren said this last night, if you can drape yourself in Trump, that could be positive for you with the voting base, right? You want to appear to be, hey, I am the most MAGA here. And I said last night, whoever could out-MAGA the other, Cornyn or Paxton, they could possibly grab the nomination. Now, of course, Paxton has so much baggage, and we heard him talk last night and saying, hey, I had to take that flight to Mar-a-Lago, really trying to cozy up with President Trump, show how close of friends he is. But Cornyn, meanwhile, is saying this guy is a problem in the general election. If he wins, we're not going to stand a chance against the Democrats. I can get it done. I'm the one who can make the difference here. And so it's going to be really interesting. But then even more drama starts to unfold, and Rudy comes up to me as soon as I come in today and says, hey, it looks like President Trump is going to make an endorsement. And President Trump did put this out on Truth Social. I'll bring it up. I won't go to Truth Social, but we'll bring it up on Twitter here. And it's really interesting because I think it's President Trump basically, you would assume whoever he gives the nomination to or the endorsement to is going to get a huge, huge backing because of this. And so let's pull this up. Here it is. President Trump on Truth Social here. This was at about noon today, what I assume would be Eastern time. So he says, the Republican primary race for the United States Senate in the great state of Texas, a state I love and won 3 times in record numbers, the highest vote ever recorded by far, cannot go for the good of the party and our country itself be allowed to go on any longer. It must stop now, in all caps. We have an easy-to-beat radical left opponent, and we have to totally focus on putting him away quickly and decisively. He doesn't name Tallarico there. Both John and Ken, John Cornyn and Ken Paxton, ran great races, but not good enough. So he's basically saying, hey, you guys, okay, pretty good races, but not good enough. Now this one must be, all caps, perfect. My endorsements with the Republican Party have been virtually insurmountable. It is such an honor to realize and say that almost everyone I endorse wins, and wins by a lot, especially in Texas. I will be making my endorsement soon and will be asking the candidate that I don't endorse to immediately drop out of the race. Is that fair, he asks. We must win in November. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Really interesting there, saying, hey, I'm the kingmaker. If I choose somebody, they're going to win. I've got a good track record of it. Then he says, I'm going to endorse somebody, and whoever I don't endorse, they need to drop out immediately. And then even ask the question, is that fair? If they want to win, they need to decide who they want to go up against Tallarico and not having the party fight against each other. Anyway, really interesting to see what happens. If you were to ask either candidate, I think they would say that they're going to get the endorsement months ago. We saw John Cornyn here in downtown Austin at the Omnia Hotel at this economic forum. And he even mentioned it at the time, I think I'll get an endorsement. I think President Trump knows that if we really want to beat the Democrats, he needs to choose me and not Ken Paxton because he felt like Ken Paxton just has so much baggage. But something interesting that Rudy pointed out last night was, despite all of that, despite the personal problems, he felt as though Ken Paxton could say, hey, here on paper, here are the things I've done for Texas, the lawsuits, the way I go after people, I'm a fighter for you. And we've seen with President Trump, I mean, from a personal, standpoint of what you do in your personal life, I don't know if people care about that as much anymore. We've seen President Trump win two presidential races despite so much backlash from other people who say he has baggage. And so I believe Ken Paxton is probably going to sit there and say the same thing. And if he gets the endorsement from Trump, just more empowered to do so. With all that, I'll try and get this up again. I do want to show you guys, if I'm correctly, my goodness, that is loud. Let's bring that volume down a little bit. This is what should be a celebratory night for James Tallarico. You see the Lone Star flag there behind the stage, and our reporter Jenna King is going to be out there as she was last night. I give Jenna a lot of credit. She was there pretty much all night until Tallarico got the nod for the nomination, and we are waiting for him to make a speech, what would be celebratory in nature. Obviously, it's 6:40 right now. We know media was getting there around 5 o'clock, so we're not quite sure exactly when he will speak. I was initially told he was going to talk at 7 o'clock, but then one of our producers here telling me he may actually talk at 8 o'clock. So we'll try and stay on this as best we can, and if and when he speaks and we're on, I'll go straight to that so you can hear straight from the horse's mouth on this nomination. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll talk more about this. We'll check back in with this campaign. We will also look in on a vigil that is going on at UT Austin tonight. Obviously, that horrific mass shooting that happened over the weekend. A lot of people still shaken up from that. And I think we kind of, we move on so quickly to the next day, and whatever the next story is, we forget what happens over the weekend sometime. We've got the war in Iran, we've got the strikes across the Middle East, and then the next day we have this mass shooting here in downtown Austin on West 6th Street. Horrifying images, that shooter being taken out by Austin police, and then we find out 2 people had died. A third person was then taken off life support, moving the total victims up to 3. 4 people dying in total if you count the gunman. But tonight, UT Austin holding a vigil. One of those students killed, Savitha Shawn. Horrible. And then we also know a Texas Tech student died as well. These are kids. 21 years old, 19 years old. Horrible. And then the other person that was taken off life support, we found out, was a man by the name of Jorge Peterson, who had just moved here. An aspiring MMA fighter, and he comes here, and just horrible what happened. So we will check in with that. We will check in with James Tallarico as well. And then if anything else comes up, we'll be sure to check on that as well. You're watching Austin Live right here on the Fox Local app. Welcome back to Austin Live, right here from the Fox 7 Austin newsroom on this Wednesday night, the night after the primary election. We spend so much of our time in that opening segment, obviously talking about the fallout from all of this and kind of where everything settles. We know, obviously, James Tallarico getting a big win there with the Democratic nomination. Over on the GOP side, we are going to have a runoff between Ken Paxton, the Attorney General here in Texas, and the incumbent, John Cornyn. And it looks like, from what President Trump said today on Truth Social, he's going to make an endorsement. He's going to tell the other person to drop out so they have a real focused effort on what they're doing against James Tallarico, because I think they saw the surge in Democratic voters last night, the energy that the Democratic voters had. And as Rudy mentioned, where Wilco goes, maybe the state of Texas goes. Wilco meaning Williamson County. And we see a very purple turnout last night, of course, supporting James Tallarico. So we'll check on that in a second, just to let you guys know. We've got a camera here in Austin at Tallarico's event. They're preparing for him to come out. From our understanding, this is sort of a victory speech, a victory lap for him after last night's big win. A long night for him. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't know until about 1:30 in the morning that Tallarico had grabbed that nomination, defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who had her base there out in Dallas County. But a huge win for James Tallarico, and it's going to be a battle now between Cornyn and Paxton, unless President Trump just says, you know what, I'm making an endorsement, and that's that. I think we have our graphics back here to show you guys the results from last night, and we do. Boom, there it is. So here are the numbers, and just a huge turnout for both, really. I mean, over 1 million votes apiece. Incredible there. 98% of those estimated votes counted. James Tallarico with more than 1.2 million votes, getting it in the majority there with 52%. Jasmine Crockett just over 1 million at 46%. And, of course, Ahmad Hassan barely getting anything there, just 1% at 31,000 votes. And then, as I mentioned, much closer on the GOP side. Look at this. Watch these numbers. Oh, that's not what we want. I want this one. That's just so dominating. What's the point? This is getting even closer now. I mean, look at that between Cornyn and Paxton. That's as close as you can get. John Cornyn there with this slight lead, over 900,000 votes, just under 42%. Ken Paxton still stuck there at about the 800,000 mark, almost 880 now. And then Wesley Hunt, that number moved up a little bit last night. Last time I saw it, it was at 13%. But, I mean, 300,000 votes is something to say for Wesley Hunt and what he has done in his campaign. As Rudy mentioned last night, I mean, he's been trying his best to campaign and get himself out there and get recognition, but believes it was just too little, too late, just could never fully get out of the gate there. Ken Paxton, of course, has a track record to talk about in being the Attorney General and really being this fighter and part of the MAGA movement and part of really trying to say, hey, I'm close with President Trump, okay? And so he bragged about going on the plane and going out to Mar-a-Lago last night. And John Cornyn just keeps saying this guy is crooked and he's got a terrible history and he brings up his divorce all the time, and it's gotten pretty nasty. It really has. But at the same time, I think a lot of people, as is the case with a lot of politicians, they just get bored with people. And Cornyn's been there a really long time. The guy's in his 70s. And so is it time for someone new? We will see. But if President Trump comes out and says, hey, Cornyn, you're my guy, he's going to tell Ken Paxton, you're not running anymore. But you would have to assume, and Rudy mentioned this as well, he likes Ken Paxton clearly because of Paxton's allegiance to him. But you would have to assume he gives him some sort of job in the administration. It just wouldn't be with Senate. So maybe he takes him to the DOJ. Maybe he gives him some sort of ambassadorship. I'm not quite sure. But if you want to use him for what he does, and that's go after people in court, then I would assume try to put him in the DOJ. Let's take a real quick look at the governor's race, which was just totally dominant by Greg Abbott. Marco was on this yesterday, this thing over before it even started. Greg Abbott, 1.7 million votes, 82% there. Pete Chambers really the only person with anything, getting 240,000 votes there, just absolutely dominating at 82%. So 1.7 million there for Greg Abbott. And then watch the Democratic primary here. Gina Hinojosa grabs this, and respectable. I mean, 1.2, almost 1.3 million people. She's just under 60%. So now the question becomes, let's say you add in all of Chris Bell's votes. I mean, you assume that all the Democrats are going to go to her side, right? You can't imagine that they would vote for Abbott. So if you just look at these numbers, you got 200,000 there. You got another 128,000 from Abrego, and then you got Bobby Cole with another 100,000. You add all that in with Gina, you got 215. I mean, that's getting a little bit closer to Abbott there. And so I think it'll certainly be quite the fight. Rudy mentioned last night that Gina's not afraid. She's a fighter. Her real big issue, obviously, being this sort of, quote, mad mom, which she jokes about and people have criticized her for. And some have said she's a one-issue candidate with education, but she's certainly not afraid. And it's going to be very interesting. And I hope we get a couple of debates out of them, because I think they're both going to go at it, and it's going to be quite entertaining, which is good. I want to show you something else just totally dominating. Talk about domination. Look at Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick here. My goodness. 85% of the vote there. Not even close. Nobody even in his vicinity there. Just total domination from Dan Patrick. This was another race super interesting last night. District 18, Congressional District 18. This is going to head to a runoff. Christian Menifee, the old guard versus the new guard. Menifee with 46% of that vote, with Al Green, who's been around the block, who, you know, jokingly was doing push-ups the other day, trying to show, hey, I may be old in age, but I'm not an old man. And we obviously saw what he did the other night at the State of the Union with the sign holding up "Black people aren't apes," a reference to the Truth Social post that was put up by President Trump before the State of the Union, depicting former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes, and then Caroline Leavitt coming out and saying, well, that's just a joke, it's just a meme. Extremely racist, obviously. And so Al Green putting that up and getting some press from that. And if you didn't see it, I'll show it to you guys. It went quite viral there for Congressman Al Green. And I'll bring it up now. This was the moment that it all went down. This is on my Instagram here, Alec Nolan TV, and you can see him holding up the sign right here. And Representative Troy Nell's here from Texas, who's wearing a Donald Trump tie, trying to take that away from him. That got real testy, didn't it? And we got a ton of comments on this thing. It just blew up. Actually, people being super racist in the comments actually is quite ugly. I'm not going to go through there. It's not worth it. But, yeah, Al Green in a tight race there. We'll pull that back up. Let's look at some other ones that have come across. Let's send this one up. This was District 33 for Colin Allred and Julie Johnson. We knew this one would be tight, but that's going to have to go to some sort of runoff here now, too. Hayes County judge was also interesting. We thought Ruben Becerra would probably take this more handedly, if you will. We talk to Ruben Becerra quite often with our stories here in Austin, but he grabs that at 51%, but I think a lot closer than people think. I mean, I know the percentages look way different, but if you just look at the straight-up numbers, I mean, 11,000 to almost 96.5. I mean, that's close. You know, that's a lot closer than I think a lot of people expected. I want to look at some of the local races that happened. The races we were covering, I mean, these were the state houses that we had looked at. We had really looked at 47, 49, 50. We had brought these candidates in for the Fox 7 Focus, and we brought in both Pooja Sethi and Joseph Kopser for the Texas Democratic primary for District 47. Vicki Goodwin, you know, leaving this seat open. Joseph Kopser, the man with the hat, I call him, a combat veteran, really quite charismatic, came in very confident, said he didn't believe, you know, he said people would misperceive that he's a Democrat because he's a combat veteran and just kind of the way he acts and being from Texas and all that. And I thought this would maybe be a little bit closer, but, you know, Pooja Sethi's got the backing. She's worked there at the Capitol, so has a lot of friends, obviously, inside the building, an immigration attorney, and she just totally dominated that race. Let's look at 49, which was so crowded. My goodness, as crowded as you could get. Montserrat Garibay right there getting that. Kathy Tobo, 28%. Josh Reyna. So, I mean, there's just so many people in this one. We knew Kathy Tobo would have a chance because of her history with Austin City Council, but Montserrat once again having a lot of friends in the Capitol, getting the endorsements, getting the big names like Greg Casar, so that's certainly helping her. We'll go to the next round of people here, and we spoke with Daniel Wang, and I have to be quite honest, I thought Daniel Wang was extremely impressive just from a personal standpoint. He's an attorney as well, very smart guy, went to MIT for undergrad, and then went to Harvard Law and works as an attorney. I mean, can you go to better universities than that? I'm not quite sure. But Daniel Wang, really impressive, had a lot to say about energy. So I thought maybe he would make some more ground there, but just didn't really get a social media presence, didn't really get his name out there as much. Kimmy Ellison came in as well. She couldn't have been nicer. She's a nurse here in Austin and just felt like she needed to run and show people, hey, us nurses out there who are seeing what's going on with healthcare, we want to make a difference too. So those are some of the local races. We'll, of course, try to run through these numbers more. I'm seeing now, I believe the vigil is being held outside UT Austin. If we're going to go for that just for a short second here, this obviously in response to the horrific mass shooting from the weekend. 3 people have died. So let's take it in right now, a very somber moment for so many of these students as they try to deal with this tragedy here in Austin. Once again, if you're just joining us here, these are some images outside of UT Austin, a vigil being held for the victims of that horrific mass shooting over the weekend. One of those victims, a UT Austin student, and so many people here on the campus coming out, holding this vigil tonight. We're going to try and stay on this. Certainly a heartbreaking moment for the families out there, for the friends out there, anyone affected by this, the others that were critically injured. A horrific night, early Sunday morning. The shooter taken out by Austin police swiftly, under a minute, 56 seconds. Those brave officers taking out the suspect, as we know, the 53-year-old who was originally from Senegal, came here about 25 years ago, got married to a U.S. citizen, and we learned today from our Crime Watch reporter, Meredith Aldis, that he actually had gone through a divorce, and so we do have some paperwork from that in terms of the mother getting full custody and he having to do these sort of monitored visits, if you will. So we'll listen into this vigil. Once again, this is being held at UT Austin right here in memory of those victims from the horrific mass shooting over the weekend. Once again, this is a vigil being held outside of UT Austin for those victims in the tragedy over the weekend, the mass shooting at Buford's Beer Garden. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll check back in on this vigil. Of course, you can follow us at Fox 7 Austin. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Austin Live right here on the Fox Local app on this Wednesday night. A very somber night for a lot of people here in the Central Texas community. A vigil is being held as we speak right now at UT Austin, remembering those victims. 3 people have died, 4 total counting the gunman. We're going to listen in now to what appears to be one of the students talking at the UT Austin campus.
And it feels as though we are all desperately searching for a light strong enough to illuminate the brokenness around us. It makes us take stock of our lives, and we should, knowing that tomorrow is never promised. Yet hope remains. Over the past few days, I, along with all of us, have been reflecting on the small moments that make life and this place so special. Whether it's walking down Speedway on a Monday evening as students are leaving their last class for the day, seeing students spread across the Tower lawn studying together, or sitting with friends walking around Peace Park. These moments can feel ordinary when they are happening, but they are those small moments that quietly shape this special time in our lives. They are reminders that this season of life is one of its own, and it does not last forever. And as I look around tonight, I'm reminded once again of why this place means so much to all of us. In the crowd gathered here tonight, I see more than classmates. I see a singular family grieving the loss of one of our own, and others who were so needlessly wounded on what should have been a carefree college night. The people here are what makes this place. And so when one of us celebrates, we all celebrate together. And on a night such as this, when one of us grieves, we all grieve together. And tonight we gather as that family to remember Savitha Shawn and the members of our community whose lives were taken from us prematurely this weekend. Their lives mattered, and their memory will forever remain with us. Every life on this campus carries an inherent value and a unique purpose. When even just one member of this community is lost, it leaves a space that can never be replaced. It leaves an absence that reminds us how deeply connected we are to one another. In moments like this, it is easy to feel anger, sadness, and confusion. But perhaps one of the greatest ways we can honor the life we remember tonight is by choosing to care for one another more intentionally. We do this by choosing kindness, by choosing patience, by choosing to see people around us not simply just as classmates or strangers, but as brothers and sisters who matter. May we become that kind of community that seeks to repair the brokenness we see around us, whether that be one small act of compassion at a time, one conversation, one simple smile, one act of making somebody feel seen today. I truly believe the friend we remember tonight would want that from us. I believe they would want us to look out for one another more closely, to treat one another with deeper care, and to never take the people around us for granted. And to remember that life is a gift, best lived with the joy and an openness to learning and understanding. And so, friends, every student, every faculty member at this university truly matters. Each of you is unique and irreplaceable. There will never be another person like you on this earth. And so what happened this weekend is devastating. But tonight we gather to remember, to support one another, and to honor lives that will never be forgotten. And as we do so, I know I speak for all of us when I say we continue to pray for those who are still healing in the hospital or at home, and for the families gathered here, many of them tonight, who are carrying unimaginable grief during this difficult time. May God protect them. May He bring comfort to those who mourn, and may His peace rest upon this university and the city of Austin, both now and forevermore. Amen. Thank you.
Once again, if you're just joining us here on the Fox Local app here on Austin Live on this Wednesday, this is images of a live vigil happening right now outside of UT Austin, remembering
The Dash
the
is a
victims
poem
lost
by American writer
in
Linda
the tragic
Ellis.
mass shooting over the weekend.
First written and
We'll
published
listen
in 1996, it serves as a sobering commentary about the brevity of life and what we ought to make of it. It calls on us to take up service, to live fully and intentionally and without regret, because no one is promised tomorrow. The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So, think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to remember and consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. And be less quick to anger and to show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So, when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Thank you.
want everyone here to know you are not alone. You only have to look to your left and right to know that. This past weekend affects us all in a deep way. For those of you who witnessed this tragedy, know someone affected, or feel lost, this is a heavy time. We are here to support you during this difficult time.
Once again, if you're just joining us, this is a
The
vigil being
Counseling
held
and
at
Mental
UT
Health
Austin
Center
for those victims
is here in
that
the
were
tent
lost over
at
the
the back
weekend.
if you need someone to talk to. They also take walk-in appointments at their 2 locations in the WCP and SSB. The university also offers 24/7 virtual care through Timely Care. Tonight is a time for you to gather, pray, reflect, and remember in a manner that you feel called to. After the last song, we have no other programming, but please feel free to stay for as long as you'd like. Let's be present with one another. Reach out to your friends. Ask for help if you need it. Let's be light and hope to one another as we walk through tragedy together.
And so thank you all guys for being here tonight. It's a difficult time. We're going to get through it. We're all in this together. I love you. We all love each other here. And now we are going to hear a solo of The Eyes of Texas.
Once again, if you're just joining us here, these are live images from UT Austin, a vigil being held tonight for the victims lost in that tragic mass shooting over the weekend. 3 people killed by 53-year-old Njaga Jani, a man who had come here from Senegal and was killed by Austin police, thankfully, on that night after the shooting broke out. But now we have seen so many students here coming out and paying their respect to the lives of those that were lost. These are live images right now at UT Austin, a vigil being held